How old were you in 1979? Just try to remember. Go back in time. I was 14 years old. Do you know how the world looked like in 1979? Any idea? The biggest innovation of 1979 was the portable audio cassette player by Sony. I think a lot of 14-year-old children don't even know what an audio cassette tape is. In your home, there was no computer. The personal computer was introduced by IBM in 1981. The world has changed dramatically since 1979. Totally different. We moved from the industrial age into the digital age. Everything has changed, except education, except schools. They're still basically functioning as a factory. To illustrate this, I will introduce you to Ronald. Ronald is 17 years old, and he just finished his high school. That gives him the right to enter to a next phase of education, higher vocational education, a University of Applied Sciences. The first thing he has to do is choose a profession. Do you really have to choose a lifelong profession when you're 17 years old? Yes, you have. Otherwise, you cannot enter the system, because the system is about 4-year programs that prepare you for an outlined profession. So Ronald is forced to choose, and he chooses for becoming a teacher English, an English teacher. That's a 4-year degree program. So Ronald steps on the assembly belt, the production line, that brings him to English teacher. But after 4 months, Ronald thinks, I don't want to become an English teacher. And so let's say in February, he quits the program. And now he has to wait another 4 months, 5 months, 6 months to enter another production line. And in order, he has to wait, so he starts working in a supermarket. You see a lot of them in supermarkets around March, April, June. And by the way, his parents lose 2,000 euros of tuition fee that's paid for Ronald. So next September, Ronald enters this production line that prepares for human resource management. But in the last months, he lost his learning attitude. So he fails to pass the first exams. And because of his dyslexia, he's not very good in the multiple choice tests. So at the end of the first year, he does not have the 54 out of 60 points that are required to go to the second year. So he has to quit again. He has to say goodbye to his classmates for the second time. His parents lose another 2,000 euros, by the way. And next year, September, he will try again, maybe social work. Ronald is no exception. Any idea how many of the first-year students in higher education quit in the first year, in percentage? 35%. And how many do have a degree or a diploma after 5 years? The program is only 4 years, but after 5 years, if you enter in the first year, how many of them have a diploma after 5 years? 48%, less than half of them. Ronald is everywhere. I'm sure that you have a Ronald in your surrounding. Isn't it? You can be a Ronald. It can be your son. It can be your daughter. And you know how it feels when you have a child or a student that does not fit into the system. You know how it feels. I know how it feels because Ronald is one of my daughters. One of my daughters started 2 times with the first year. First time, not the right choice. Second time, her dyslexia made that she didn't make the first year. And I know how it feels. It makes you sad and angry about the system. And now that I'm in the position to change the system, it motivates me to try it, just try it. I know with a lot of colleagues that it's a hard job, but we must, because the system itself is outdated. And it's outdated for 3 reasons. The first one is that every child is unique. There is no average student. There's Ronald, there's your son, there's my daughter. And the problem is not that my daughter does not fit into the system. The problem is that the system does not adapt to my daughter. That's the real problem. Education should not be a system or a factory. It should be a personal service. The second reason why the system should change is that we know by now a lot of learning that we did not know, let's say, in the 19th century. Who of you did learn anything in the last 2 years? It's very risky not to show your hand at the moment. Did you learn anything in the last 2 years? You just learned nothing? Yeah, you did learn something. Who of you attended the classroom in the last 2 years? 25%. Oh, it's lifelong learning what I see here. But we know now the education as a factory or school as a factory is built on the assumption that we learn by sitting in a classroom and listening to a teacher, transferring knowledge. By now we know that effective learning is about a lot of other things. It's about projects, it's about teamwork, it's about real-life situations, etc. And the third reason that the system or education should change is that we must adapt, we must learn our students to adapt to a rapidly changing society. The whole idea that a Ronald or your daughter or your son should choose a lifelong profession at 17 is ridiculous. We know by now that a lot of professions we have nowadays will disappear in the next decades, and that new professions will appear, and that we need new skills. We call them the 21st century skills. They are about creativity, about ability to cooperate, about critical thinking. And specific those skills, you do not learn them by sitting in a classroom and listening to a teacher. You learn them in other ways. So school as a factory will not work in the 21st century. And what's the alternative? I think it's time for a new paradigm. School, not as a factory, but education as a service, and school as an open platform. And 3 elements are essential for this alternative. The first is professional coaching, the second, a flexible personal learning path, and the third, a seamless learning experience. First, professional coaching. In my dream, the school career of Ronald starts with a personal assessment. Who are you? What are your talents? What motivates you? And if you don't have an outlined idea of your future profession, it's no problem. Just let's discover it. Let's discover your future. And we do not start a 4-year fixed program. We start a personal learning journey. And personal does not mean individual. It does not mean studying alone. It means that it's fit for you. But as soon as we have had this assessment of Ronald, we allocate him not to a classroom with 25 students who have chosen the same route, but we allocate him to a base group, a learning community, with a personal coach and a group coach. And this learning community will accompany you throughout your school career. Saying goodbye to your classmates can be rather traumatic. So professional coaching is the first element. The second is a flexible personal learning path. Nowadays, we define a program, a degree program, by the courses you follow, by the input. So if you follow this course, you can do this test, and in the end you have a degree. In the future, we will define courses, not courses, but a program by learning outcomes. What are the skills you have to acquire? What is the set of knowledge you should prove to have mastered? And the way you acquire those skills or this set of knowledge It's free. And the tests we do, the testing, is independent from the learning activities you have chosen. This is a real revolution in education that's starting nowadays. And it opens a world of a flexible, personal learning journey, learning paths for every student. And the most important outcome of this way of education is that a student learns to take ownership of his own learning as a preparation for a lifelong learning journey. Besides coaching and a flexible personal learning path, the third element is a seamless learning experience. A seamless experience, that's what you expect from Netflix, from Amazon or Bol.com. You expect them to adapt to you, and not the other way around. In a lot of schools, it's still the other way around. You can illustrate it by walking. If you go into a school, every hour you see a lot of children moving from one classroom to another classroom, and the teacher staying in his or her classroom. Just think about it, how strange. In my opinion, it should be the other way around. The classroom is the community room, the home base of the group of students. And the coaches or the teachers should be on the move. And in my future dream of education as a personal service, teachers, coaches, the building, IT, schedules, stewards, everyone in a school as a team works together to offer a seamless learning experience to a student. So waiting 4 months or 6 months, as Ronald had to do, in order to enter a new program, that's no service. You don't accept it from Amazon or Bol.com that they make you wait 4 months to deliver a package. Why do we expose our children to such a bad service? My dream for Ronald, for his children, for my children or grandchildren, is that education or higher vocational education starts with a personal assessment. That we don't force children to choose a profession, but that we start a journey, a time to discover their future. That they become part of a learning team, and that they stay part of this team during their school period. And that they are supported by a personal coach, and that their route is flexible. If they need more time, there's more time. If they don't pass multiple choice tests, there are other tests. My dream can be summarized as follows. School as a factory. In school as a factory, in the old ways, everything is fixed. What you learn, where you learn, when you learn, how you learn, with whom you learn, it's fixed. Only one thing is flexible, your success. In my dream of education as a service, everything is flexible. When you learn, where you learn, how you learn, with who you learn, one thing is certain, you will succeed. I think this dream can become true. There are a lot of schools, we do it in Zwolle, there are schools here in Harderwijk who try and are experimenting with this personal learning path. I think it's time for change. Did you ever took time to listen this Pink Floyd song to the very end? It's a long track, but in the end, you hear a telephone. There is a telephone ringing. It's an unanswered telephone. Someone is calling education or schools that's time to change. I think after 38 years, it's time to answer that phone and change education from a factory into a personal service. Thank you.